All right. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. It is Thursday, February 15th. I hope you all had a wonderful Valentine's Day. This is the SIG Network regular call. And as usual, we are governed by the CNCF Code of Conduct, which basically boils down to don't be a jerk. So please, let's not be jerks. Not that we've ever had a problem with that on this call. This is the regular call, so let's start with triage. We've got a pretty light agenda the last I looked. Yeah, just a couple of topics. So we'll do some triage and we'll do some topics, and if we need to, we can come back to some triage. I'll go ahead and share the screen with the window. And here we go. The good news is we have less than we had last time. Some of them have closed. The bad news is some of them, a fair number of them, look to be flaking tests. So we need to spend some time digging into these. Relatively new one, a flake around endpoints on a host network. I haven't looked into it yet. I don't know if anyone else has.
Yeah, there is uncommon. Okay, it's a test that.
Okay.
The test is best to return the host name, and I think that some AWS nodes returns an IP address or something. Okay, I will follow up.
It looks like it's returning a fully qualified name. Awesome. Yes, that issue has never bitten any of us before. Okay, so this one's good. Lars filed an interesting bug. Lars, you want to talk about it? Are you here?
Yeah, it's a small issue. I don't think basically anybody have no default route, but some security person might ban default routes, and then it's hard to get it working. As you can see, you can specify specific routes, but you have to do that for the cluster IP range and every external IP address. So it's not easy. A default address is super simple.
Is this something people do? I've never heard of people doing this.
Remove the default route?
Yeah.
No. Basically, I just stumbled upon it because if I have no routers, I don't set up a default route in my virtual cluster, and things stopped working. So I just wrote an issue.
I see.
We can ignore it safely if you think it's nothing to worry about.
I don't mind adding documentation in particular. Like we could go into the kubeproxy docs or somewhere in the services docs and explain this assumes that all of your nodes have a default route. Like, do you think just a sentence like that would suffice?
Yeah, but in installation, and a comment is, there is already a comment in the kubeadm documentation, and that might be sufficient, but it's not really good, because it says that the installation must have a default route, or you specify the routes. But if you don't have a default route, the installation will go well, but Kubernetes will not work.
It won't work.
Well, why we're not? Well, so I mean, it what I try to put out, it's a routing design problem. It can work while you specify all the needed routes. So
Yeah,
the full route solves everything, but
I think that is harder to explain.
Yeah, but what is harder to explain for someone that removes the default route? That's my question, right? If you remove your default route, I'm assuming, oh, you are a super knowledgeable guy about routes.
Yeah, I think the fix here is, I mean, if it's already mentioned, maybe we make it stronger, or we cross-reference it in one of the service-related docs, and that's it. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to try to find the right doc, or shall someone else take it?
I can try if I get some help from the other Tim.
Okay.
I usually ask him.
Yeah, he knows where all the bodies are buried in the docks. I'll send this to you. Cool, thank you. Next, may not have provider ID. This looks like it's a topic on the agenda today. Is that right? Yeah. Let's leave it open and we'll talk to it on the agenda unless somebody wants to talk about it now.
This is a problem on the cloud provider code. And we have, since we move, I think that was the release of the previous one, to the external cloud providers, we start to find all these races, right? We found this with external addresses that I fixed it with the help of a lot of people, and then when she told me that also broke some projects, and I don't know. We don't have a good coverage or testing or whatever in the external cloud providers, and these controllers are not well maintained. I mean, this should be Node, and I think that I was reviewing all of these PRs here.
Okay. All right. Well, this is on the agenda for next up after triage, so let's push forward. This one, we're actually back to a month already, which is great. I don't know the context on this one. I don't remember the context on this one. Did we talk about this last time, if I recall?
We did. I actually have a PR that will fix this, or not quite fix it, but at least give you a warning if you're hitting the bug. I was waiting for enhancement freeze to be over to poke you to review it, so you should review that linked PR.
Okay. It's assigned to me.
Don't know.
Nope. All right. I'll look at it when I jump into PRs next. Cool. Next, we have a test. Oh, this was down at the bottom. Why is this? Oh, EKS failure load balancers. Why? I don't like just disabling.
No, but the problem is that the EKS load balancers, when working with TCP, need an annotation. And they try to add the annotation to the test. And then I stop it, because if we start, every cloud provider start to add their own annotation to the test, we have like 3 switch statements to say, oh, if AWS do this, if do the other.
Yeah, right.
And we need to rewrite the test to be agnostic and well.
Does this mean that they won't pass conformance?
No, load balancer is not conformance.
Okay, that's right.
So this came because the whole migration of CI from Google only to AWS, right? So when they started to add these new jobs, they started to pull all these tests, and some of the tests started to fail, and some of the tests were saying, "Oh, if GKE, just do this." And in this case, it was that AWS needs this additional annotation to work with load balancer. At least was the thing that I saw the other day.
So they're aware of it. We can leave it open for another cycle and then start bothering them again. Another flaky one. Ooh.
This is the our noise in the core. Last 2 times there was something with the infra. I forget to check. These are the scale tests. Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do we do with it?
Arnaud has his hands up.
Oh, speak up, Arnaud. Sorry, I'm looking at the screen, wrong screen.
Yeah, there's no data to prove that this is an infrastructure issue. So I'm not exactly sure how to look into this and flag. Could be something with a GC resources, but I'm not sure about that. So I'm not exactly sure how I can look into this and basically flag this as an infrastructure issue.
Okay, which test was this? Master skill. I think. All right.
I
What do we do, Antonio?
I have to now I'm going to have more time. I can dig into that. Last there is this
No story
environment
needed.
is yeah okay.
Okay.
I
All right, we'll leave it for one more. Windows, different protocols, same port. This is assigned to Mr. Zappa. Mr. Zappa? No?
Oh, this is the Windows side. Yeah, we still haven't gotten a response from this one.
All right, this is me pinging you. Next. Ports with, oh yes, there's a PR open for this one. How are we for time? Oh, we should stop. Let's do this last one. Apply for node IP, dual stack. Oh, apply issues. Gosh, the headaches never stop. I need to look at this one. I'll take this one. It's already assigned to me. Great. Okay, let me stop here and turn over to the rest of the agenda. Next up is Bowie talking about node resources not having provider ID populated. Bowie, are you here? Somebody in Bowie's place? I don't see Bowie on the list. Okay, then let's turn over instead to Mache, and if Bowie or somebody turns up, then we'll jump back to that later. Mache, the floor is yours. I already gave you co-host, so you can share screen if you want.
I don't want to share screen. I just added the links so some folks can go into them, because I don't want to go make this a conversation about multi-network. So basically what I want to bring up to this forum, and I think we have quite a few folks around here to discuss the current form of the CAP, and there's one point I want to kind of I want to mention about this and discuss whether we want to kind of add that. And with the recent discussions of complexity in Kubernetes, what even Antonio presented 2 weeks ago, we have feature creep. Features are basically started, not finished. All that. I want to kind of get the community consensus on should we pursue multi-networking in current form, and but kind of the main kind of contention of this whole thing is that we again want to expand pod spec, add list of what sort of networks I want to add, and make a pod network a core object. And basically that's the details I want to kind of that's the level of details I would like to leave, because there is a bit more, something that probably can be flashed out, because in the CAP, and I provided you links with some overview of what pieces additionally we are touching on, and there is a link to the CAP itself. But kind of the core gist here: do we want, as a community, do we want to have a pod network object or an object representing a network in Kubernetes as a core component, right? Today, this is being done through CRDs, and then those has to deal with some annotation on a pod, etc., which is basically a bad user experience. So our kind of main goal with this is introduce a built-in object to improve user experience moving forward, right? That's kind of the whole thing of our multi-networking effort that we introduced last year, and kind of the fruit of the discussion is phase one that we're currently trying to get. We have a solid design CAP and move forward to kind of get that sorted out. So the floor is anyone who wants to kind of chip in or have a concerns with that. Please, I want to kind of make this a discussion. Hopefully we can get to a consensus. If we run out of time, we can move this to a mailing list. If not, but yeah, please speak up.
I feel like we can't really come to a consensus in this meeting if people aren't
And
fully
that's
up to date on all the.
And that's perfectly fine. That's why I'm saying we can then everyone can have a chance. I can start and mail list thread, but anyone I would like to kind of other type of concerns with this, or please.
I mean, is it worth spending a couple minutes to revisit the primary use cases, the problem statements?
That's a fair point. Yeah, we probably could do that. Yeah, let's go
just to
over
bring it back to the front of everybody's mind. I know the
Okay.
design has evolved and downscoped over the last several quarters. So
yeah, it did a bit. So that's one of the aspects that we did compared to maybe to last. Let me think. Where do I want to do this? Here. Give me a second to open some readable version of the cap so that we can all look at it. Where was this? Here. So the use cases we do want to cover is kind of can boil down to a few. Can you see my screen okay?
yeah.
So the first one is multi-homing capability of providing a pod with multiple interfaces. And this is for ability to isolate your traffic and separate your traffic by network interface. This is mostly used by telecom side where we have some sort of government compliance for this, where they would want to have the traffic segregated. That's one of the use cases. The other, I'm gonna just go through all of them. If someone has some questions, then stop me, and then we can we can discuss more. But the other use case is similar, but with ability to provide a high performance interface into the pod, meaning I want to have a high performance hardware device passed into the pod. And this is again a telecom use case where we would want to have a low latency hardware-based interface to my pod for my network functions instead of just the software-based interface. That's another use case. Then story 3 basically is repetition of number 1. It's just multi-homing, but with ability to no, apologies. Let me step back. This is a use case where we would want to connect pods to different networks. So then this is, imagine your capability of multi-tenancy. So I can have pods connected with just one interface, and they are connected to different networks with all the capabilities that today pod has, right? So that's another use case. The next one will be with similar as the previous one, but this one is to support virtual machines, right? So I have I want to build a VM orchestrator on top of my Kubernetes, and something similar to the existing capabilities like VMware has in vSphere, or even the clouds where I want to spin up a VM. I have a concept of VPCs or networks. I want to have something similar to be done here on top of Kubernetes. So I would like to have a representation of a network where I can attach my VMs towards, and then have a segregation of those. Here I'm presenting a capability of VLANs, but this is just an example. Underlying infrastructure can be, in this case, like an above example, it can be a vSwitch. Here it can be a VLAN.
To be clear, 4 and 3 are the exact same use case, but one is for container, one is for VM.
That's
right?
true. Yes, exactly true.
Sorry, hi, this is Prashant. I'm on the phone, so I couldn't put up my hand. Mache, is it fair to say that the first one is not only for telco, when you say multi-home, do you have producer-consumer kind of cases, which are sort of service driven, like someone is providing a service and producing a service for a consumer to consume, and
Yeah,
they want
that's
a
a good.
management link on.
Yeah, we didn't call that one. Yeah, this is something that I think internally popped out, where we would want to have a type of. Thank you for bringing this up, Prashant. A use case where we have a producer and a consumer of that product, and basically I would like to have that producer is a one service, right? So I have some service in a pod, and I want to kind of provide that service to my consumers. And I don't want to create a separate cluster for each of my consumers. And I want to connect with those consumers in a secure means. So this is where my second interface can come into the play to state that, okay, I will connect to my pods workloads through that secondary interface, which are then the isolation aspect, so that I don't mix up my different consumers across different companies or different organizations. Yeah, Antonio, go ahead.
Yeah, I made a similar comment to MySapa this like yesterday or something like this. Is that as soon as we start going deep into the problem, we are just jumping too fast into a solution. You already started describing a solution, right? And for people that are not clear with the environments, so for example, I don't know why is this only possible solution that this user is going to be able to use? Why they cannot use another solution that is already in Kubernetes? So these kind of questions, I added this comment today. Is the one that I don't have clear is why do we need to fall back to this solution? Right, this is a solution. Cannot they do it in another way right now? Is what are the mechanisms that we are lacking in Kubernetes to provide the user experience? How this works with existing models of deployment, right? Are they going to use a deployment for running these things? How they are using Kubernetes? Those questions I don't know. I mean, that's why I always, and I push it. I was discussing yesterday with Mike, and in his cap too, is look, I know that you put a lot of thought on this, but this is not clear for everybody. It's why they need to do this way, right? And that will be useful to have this context for the rest of us.
No, that's fair. And I think that's something that probably I can expand on the stories. But I think at least on the examples that I just, let's say the producer consumer approach, right? This is all about making sure the consumers themselves are properly isolated. Putting them on, you have to connect to those consumers in some ways, so you cannot share the connections. So the existing components, let's say network policy, won't cut it, right? Because those consumers will be on a completely different, in our case, VPCs. And now how do I, or different networks for that matter, and those can have even example of simple, they will have overlapping IPs in those consumer environments because they are completely independent consumers. And how do I deal with that, right? With those overlapping IPs. I cannot make sure that on the same one network, I will put all that traffic on the same control plane traffic. That's one of the, and this is one of the examples, but I agree with you. Some of those use cases need to have a better context on that, and I will try to work on towards kind of giving more color to that. Any other questions? Let me go to the some other stories that we had. I need to reconcile myself as well. So this one is to ability to story number 5 is just multi-homing in the different form where the use case isn't sending consumer, just I want to have connection to my legacy networks for some reason in the workload, right? So that's just another flavor of multi-homing capability. Story number 6 is another flavor or multi-tenancy capability. So here it's split on namespaces where, let's say, namespace A connects to default pod network, but the other namespaces are connecting to network A and network B. So this is another use case of what we could be possible and we would want to achieve with having multi-pod networking, right?
So I want to just be on record. That's the least compelling use case to me, right? Those are the use cases that can be solved with policy. And so I'm most interested in those use cases that, like network policy, either today or the evolution of, simply cannot solve.
But then I can throw at you again overlapping IPs. And then you cannot solve this with network policies, unfortunately.
And I'm saying I kind of reject that as a requirement that that they have overlapping IPs.
Got it.
No,
I mean,
I think
for pods within the cluster, there's I don't see a requirement, or rather, to follow Antonio's lead, what's the problem statement that leads to the requirement for overlapping IPs when it's just the pods talking to themselves within the cluster? Right. If you're talking to some other device, to some other external site, then you have basically a different cluster, right?
Right. And that's the kind of, that's what it boils down to. Yes. And it is in this manner, it is as if you create a different cluster within a single cluster. Yes, each namespace at this point would be a kind of like a separate cluster, right? Let's say those namespaces would have their own type of NATing done. And what you exactly say is that is the case, right?
Right. And it's like having a different cluster, but we don't have like sharded controllers. So you have the whole service space that gets shared, the namespace that gets shared, like DNS. I don't even know what to think about in
no,
the
there's yeah, that comes with additional. Yes, we had I remember when we had a discussion about DNS, but yes, it comes with all those consequences of that, and there is integration with other features of Kubernetes is somewhere down the line for the other phases, but yeah, that's just the use case that we would want to kind of cover.
So
And
I worked in a similar project with KCP. We tried to do this sharding, right? Single control plane. And then you have this problem with a lot of embedded things in the API server, like the Kubernetes.default, like the webhooks, right? There is the sharding and multi-tenancy in the API server. I mean, there was a field was also removed. I mean, that's another aspect that we need to evaluate. Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah, fair. And I think the other visible use case is viable use case is this one where we want to have a capability to configure the networking of the interface going to the pod. So even if I have everything connected to the same network, I would like to, let's say in this example, I would like to configure my QoS and configure what sort of bandwidth or other parameters. I assume we have already a bandwidth plugin existing, but then what if I want to even further configure something on the connection for the specific pods, right? Within the, and on a pod basis, if I have a plugin, that's another aspect of today's plugin is that it's one per node, right? So if I have a plugin, bandwidth plugin chained in my CNI configuration, it will be applicable to all the pods running in that node, right? What if I want to pick and choose who gets what, right? So I would like to have some configurability on a per pod basis, not on per node basis, right? Or even per whole cluster basis. So that's another.
I'll also add, this specific case is described by the quality of service cap too, which is also not landed, but there are other approaches to that.
Okay, fair. Yeah, I think I saw that like, yep. All right, so those are the kind of use cases that this cap's trying to address. Any other comments? So what will be the best next steps for this then? Any recommendations?
I want to. Okay. So I I've been talking with a lot of you with this KNI stuff too in parallel, and this AI/ML requirements and everything, and DRA, and you go to DRA, they are also adding capabilities to add network interfaces. And look, it's exhausting because I'm trying to find a common point and synergy between all the efforts, and then, so we can unblock people. And if we can agree in a common interface and a starting point that we can put all our energy there that allow people to keep growing, because honestly, the scope is super huge for absorbing, in my personal opinion, for all these big DRA, multi-network KNI, and all these things. So I think that there is a common need that I identify, that is, I need to be able to tell the pod to plan network interfaces or to plan hardware and be able to provide some capabilities to the hardware configuration. And I don't know if you can think on that and see that can be a building step for all of you, and we can agree on which one will be the user experience and the mechanism, we can progress faster and have this building piece and keep going and growing these new areas and ecosystems. I don't know, Tim, you were looking at DRA, and I know Mike was looking on this KNI. I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I haven't had enough time over the last 3 weeks to look at KNI in detail, and I apologize for that. KEPs, the other KEPs just took all my time. There's evolution of DRA that we would need to figure out. I don't think it's out of line with what multi-network would need, but I haven't put a lot of thought into that directly. I do appreciate, Maciej, I know you showed us some earlier designs of multi-network that were significantly more complicated than this. And like, not that this is not complicated, but they were significantly more. So I really appreciate the downscoping and the focus. This is still complicated, and we do need to make a decision about whether we can afford to keep this in the project or whether these use cases are small enough or not mainstream enough, or what, I don't know what the right word is, but not going to be covered. Right? There's some things where we can say, you know what, we're not going to handle this perfectly, go do something else. And there are cases where we say this is important enough that we want to do it. I don't know which of these it is. That said, there are use cases that are more important to me here than others, or more obvious to me than others, and I want to focus on those ones. Other folks? This is all of your project. This is where you voice your opinions.
So,
Nobody.
Maciej, you're asking what next? I guess just knowing that you feel that the KEP is at a good point for review right now is good. I guess I should go and re-review it. And
Let me, because I haven't looked at it for some time as well. I just came back from a month of my break, so let me look at it again. Maybe I'll make sure that is the case. And yeah, I think I will start a thread in the mailing list so that folks can kind of start looking into in detail. But the use cases that I presented, that's kind of the trimmed version of what team was referring to, right? We slightly cut down on the kind of use cases and requirements for this. Let me slightly adjust, because I think I need to adjust and double check that the rest of the doc, that it's kind of adjusted for that part.
okay, because it's not just the use cases, right? Like,
No, that's true. Yeah, there's
all of the use cases you gave could be implemented with Multis, but we already decided we don't want Multis as an API, right? So, like,
so it's not that dumb. You say Multus. The problem with it's
No,
need.
I'm just saying it's not just the use cases. It's also the API you are proposing to solve the use cases. You know,
right, because that's what it's kind of boils down to. So maybe what my statement before saying that this is the use cases we want to cover is maybe overstatement a bit, because we don't want to implement all those use cases. We want to give a common API, because this cap is about introducing an API and only about that then things like Multus can come in a common way, implement.
No, I'm not trying to argue for Multus. Sorry,
No,
I guess I phrased this badly. What I'm saying is that, you know, we just talked about the use cases, but even if we all agree 100% on what the use cases are, there's still question 2, which is how do we let Kubernetes users implement these use cases, and we need to agree on that too. So
Okay.
if that part of the cap is still more in flux, then, you know, it may not be totally ready for review yet.
You say on how implement this. I'm not sure
Let
whether we can define that, right, and push that on the customers. How would they implement this exactly, right?
No, I mean the API that you're going to design.
Okay, that part is there, right? That part is basically defined. Go ahead, Antonio. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, one important thing, we define API and behaviors. So it's not that we leave the API free for everybody to do whatever, right? So we need to, that's why we have E2E tests and conformance tests. This is the API, this is service, this is affinity, and this is what is expected the implementation to do.
Yes, and basically to that note is there is an API, there is behavior, but the API and the behavior will not fully implement the downpiping to the, like CNI is not part of this cap, right? Because CNI still is in picture, and this is where the CNI has to come in and implement this, right? Add it to their implementation to fully support it, right? It's not, because then we would have to implement the whole inside out and piping of it into the pod. And even if I'm not mistaken, you have some sort of a Kubernetes CNI to, even for your tests, right? In running in the CI, Kubernetes CI, that is just a simple thing that just adds interfaces, right? So this is something that I would imagine we expand on to enable the testing, but this cap does not define how you implement the things. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. I maybe
That
expressed it wrongly.
bottom
No,
piping.
I'm not saying how implement it. So what I'm saying is you define an API, right? This pod has a network, right? We have a test that every pod that defines this thing has to have a network. And this has to be, that's what I'm meaning is how do you plan the network or whatever thing or interface or whatever we name it? This is the expected behavior, right? It's not that you need to go to all the things and you need to implement this.
Yeah. So that's a fair, I think that's the word that you got the word plumbing. The plumbing part is not defined because that's up to the CNI.
That's exactly. Like you can, like the QProxy thing. You want to use IP tables and tables, whatever it is. You have a service and this has to go to the backend and whatever.
Exactly. So basically
we need to define the behavior.
Yes, that part is done, right? So we have the APIs, how they behave and how they interact with the pod. That part is all there. And we have that set, yes. Any other comments, questions?
Sorry again, this is Prashant. I don't know who was speaking. I heard Antonio and someone else. Could someone maybe add a comment or something to the cap to say what is missing? Like, then we can go take a closer look to see how to make it more complete for review.
Basically, I think
it feels like there is some.
Yeah, go ahead,
so it feels like the question about is the behavior defined. It looks like, I mean, it seems like it is, but if something is missing there, or we have been taken care of a certain angle, it would be good to call it out in the cap so that we can take a closer look and see how to resolve it.
Yeah. And then other aspect, I think, to Antonio, to what you were saying,
I couldn't hear. Sorry, I didn't get most of it.
So Prashant was saying if someone could look at the cap and see what's missing, what's still missing, what sort of details are not there or not defined, or what is what is wrong, right? That's the ask from Prashant. But I think most of it. But yeah, that's a fair. And I think Antonio, to what you were saying, what will be the path for what to do and how we would move forward? You mentioned KNI, then the DRA, and basically how to move forward with that, right? If we have all those projects and you say they are introducing a common thing, what to do next? Should we just start working with let's say DRA and see what's their current plan? Is that what you're suggesting?
So for me, as I say, and identified in KNI, and also this was confirmed by this Rooks person commenting on the CAP, I identified on the AIML thing, is everybody needs to be able to define network interfaces to plug in the pods. But these network interfaces are out of band of Kubernetes. That's the common requirement that I saw in any place. Does this mean that these network interfaces are going to be part of Kubernetes in the future? I don't know, but this is not a no, right? This doesn't stop us to grow on that. But what I see that we don't have is this capability of saying, I want to add network devices to the pods, and these network devices may require. And what I see is, if you are able to do that, you are able to solve 90% of the use cases that I see in different CAPs and in AIML. So what I'm trying to do, and I'm going to work a bit more on that, is to, in QCon, I submitted a workshop, to see if people lose a bit more, and I'm going to start to write down a doc with these possible paths, and I don't know. Honestly, I only find this a bottleneck. I feel that if we unblock the network device on the pod, we open a lot of possibilities. For example, there are things that I'm not convinced as the network object as a kind of VPC, right? Because that means you are representing an infrastructure that is not even, doesn't have a state, right? Network doesn't have a state at all. And then you have the bootstrap problem. When you create the cluster, you need to create the nodes, the pods, and then create the network after that. So that's going to be racy. I'm telling this because I've been in other projects that trying the same. So that's are my thoughts today.
I hear that. I think the bootstrapping problem is a real one. I would say it's probably worthwhile to circle back and talk about the evolution of DRA. I know because I pointed you at them before, Mache, like the problem space is similar, and the DRA problem is evolving. So we should regroup there. One thing I will say, just to emphasize, because I don't think Antonio said it hard enough, this like accelerated network devices for GPUs and those sorts of things is a very real use case that I 100% buy. I hear it more and more from customers and users. That's not, I don't think that requires all the same plumbing that's being proposed here, but it is absolutely a real use case.
Right.
So should we get oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dak.
I was just gonna propose, okay, so Antonio, you've got a workshop proposed for KubeCon. But maybe we should get these kind of 3 stakeholder groups in a room to hash this out a little bit and like figure out a like Venn diagram of what fits and doesn't fit, like between KNI, DRA, and multi-networking. Maybe it's worth it to like, maybe in places people are talking to one another about this stuff. But is it, Antonio, should we have that conversation there? Should we try to figure out something in advance? Like what's a good way to like untangle that?
For me, a good way is just us to take a step back and start to do this exercise. So what is the real problem, right? Like I commented in the thing is, what is the problem that we're going to solve? Is with, for example, with the AIML, I also it's very clear, right? All these GPUs need these interfaces and whatever, and then okay, done.
I was just gonna say, you know, Doug is asking, should we talk about this? We already, like, you submitted a contributor summit, like, talk session, whatever thing to get everybody to talk about this, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, Doug, we should.
Okay, all right, that's
No,
the
okay,
place. There we
sorry.
go. Okay,
Oh, no, but
that simplifies.
but for me, we should go to this workshop just to with our problems, you know, written down, right, and explain to the others. Oh, this is the problem that I need to solve, and I don't know how to solve it. Instead of say, oh, if you can do these two interfaces plus this object plus whatever, I can solve my problem. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to mean.
Yeah,
Sorry,
go
could
ahead,
I ask if Antonio, Tim, if we consider AI/ML use cases as one of the use cases that could be looked into as part of this model, would that help make it clear how things are gluing together? I mean, it looks like there is a network device exposed to the pod. I'm not familiar with the proposal, but if that is something that has been thought of, is that something that we should see if it fits into this model? I mean, what we're trying to say is that we want to come up with a model that helps with multiple use cases, right? AI/ML being one of them, and all the other stuff that Maciej called out being the others. And we want to provide some sort of an API framework that allows consumers to use the same set of APIs to support all of these use cases, more or less. So if AI/ML is the one that is probably not being thought of, is that going and thinking about it and coming back to see if it does fit or if it does not fit, or how does the model have to evolve to fit that in? Would that help make some progress?
I'm not sure I understand the question in particular, but let me restate the AI/ML problem as I understand it. There is a device that needs to appear in the pod's network namespace. Other than that, Kubernetes doesn't really know much about what that device is, right? It might be an IP device, it might not be an IP device, but we need to make it appear in that netns. That's a fairly opaque use case, but I think it's very real.
I think, Prashant, I can add to this. I think the concept is, why would we build towards just that one use case? Can we not generalize that a bit more to expand it to the use cases I'm bringing up?
I'm not saying we can't. I'm saying that's the one that I understand best, and it's the one that has the least requirements.
That's true.
But I think these are the questions that we are proposing, right, to the people that come to the CAPS. Okay, let's throw the problems and see what are the parts that we identify. What I see is that everybody has a partial view of their problem, right? And we are trying to put together what is the whole puzzle and try to break it down and split into pieces.
Sure.
What is clear is there is no room for everything. I mean, I think that was clear from the presentation 2 weeks ago. Not the fact that, okay.
So in terms of time, we are in the last couple minutes of the meeting. I'm glad we left a whole day for this, Maciej. Anybody else wants to comment on this before they turn back to, revisiting that CAP and thinking about the problem statements? Okay. Maciej, thanks for pursuing this continually. It's a tough one. Anybody else have topics they want to bring back up? We had an agenda item that we didn't cover, which was the provider ID stuff. I don't think we'll cover it in 5 minutes, so I'll push it to next time. I will say,
now that you're here, what's the provider ID history? You remember? I was trying to.
No, I don't remember the history there. I think it is something that I never had to deal with.
Okay.
I mean, there's a long list of things in Kubernetes that are underdefined because they were just covered by the default implementations, and then as we break it and kick things out into separate repos and concepts like cloud provider, that we realize we didn't define.
Yeah, but because I remember you and Alexander is in the call, right? Found this issue
Yeah.
and Chechari, right? We had some issue with this provider ID, right, Alex?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. So maybe
We
this
did,
is...
but it should be fixed in the service controller at least.
Okay, so
Cesar
maybe we
was,
didn't fix. Oh.
So
Okay, well, I move that to the next week agenda, and I'll ping Bowie next time to make sure he shows up for the items he signs up for. That's it for time today then. Let's wrap up, and I will go ahead and stop the recording. Oh, our next meeting is Leap Day, which will be fun. It's not often that we get to meet on February 29th. So that'll be fun. We have 2 meetings left before KubeCon Europe. So we should start planning if we're going to do a get together. Put that on the agenda for next time too. Thanks everybody for your time today. I'll stop the recording now.